Hello, and welcome to my next tutorial. I'm going to be talking about a piece of software called Sphinx. Just go to www.sphinx-doc.org and you'll basically come to this website. And it is basically, says right here that it does Python documentation generator. So if you write code for a living, someone in your career will eventually ask you, a coworker, your boss, or even a client, say, hey, is there any documentation that you have written for what code you've actually written? Now, if you say no, your boss may say, well, start writing it or start doing it. If you've been at the company for years, you may have to go back and document years worth of code that you've written. The key is you should be writing documentation as you write code. Don't be lazy about it. And I'll show you briefly how to do that here. So if you come here, so just go to python.scheffner.com. I have an example of this class here called pets, and you can see this initialization method, this add pets method, show pets, pick a random pet method. But you can see everything in these triple quotes here is documentation for someone that may come and read this program later, or the Sphinx generator will actually pick up this and make an HTML, an EPUB, any type of format you want for your documentation. So you can see here that this method takes two parameters, a name and an owner, and you can see you can do colon, the type name, so you want to put type, and then you want to put the variable name, and you want to tell it it's a string, and then you want to do param name, and then do a brief description, the name of the pet. Pretty self-explanatory there. Same here with the owner. So you want to do type owner string, and then param owner, and then a brief description, the owner of the pet. And you can see other methods down here, like this one has no variables, but you should also document what it does. So show pets, it says prints out all the pets in the list. So this will be included in the Sphinx document generator once I get to that. So that's briefly how to document Python code. Now the one caveat with Sphinx is make sure your code does not bleed outside of a class, a method, or a function. It has to be self-contained. If you put just right here like print hello world, when Sphinx is doing the auto generation of the code, it's actually going to run this part. So you want to make sure it is all self-contained. And you can come in here and paste it into this editor here. And when you collapse it here, you'll see here that it completely collapses correctly. Everything is self-contained in this class, and everything is self-contained in this statement here at the bottom, which basically says only if this file is called do this stuff here. If you don't do this, the Sphinx code generator, documentation generator will run your code. And I'll actually show you an example of that happening in the tutorial after I show you the first example. Okay, so let's get started. So here I have a new Ubuntu machine. It's a virtualized container. The reason I do this is because I've had some problems with Sphinx in the past running inside of a virtual environment versus an entire virtual server. So I basically just have an Lexi or whatever they call it container here running Ubuntu 14.04, and I'm going to show you how to configure automatic documentation for Sphinx. So the first thing you want to do here is apt-get update, and we're just running, make sure we have all the latest, our machine is up to date, so we want to do -y upgrade. So we do have some packages that need to be upgraded. Then the next thing we want to do is install a bunch of packages that Sphinx needs. So this is basically from a brand new Ubuntu server. So we're going to do build essentials, contains a bunch of GCC and other build packages that you will need to use for pip install. We want the python3 development stuff here. We want python3 pip. I installed wget because that's how I'm going to pull the code off that python.schaffner.com site with wget. And we also need somewhere to serve the documentation. Now, if you're just going to copy out EPUB, which is basically like a PDF of your documentation, that's fine. But I'm actually going to show you how to put it on a web server. So let's install all this. Okay, once that's done, we're going to just do python3 install Sphinx, which is the documentation program here. Once it's done, okay, pip3 install Sphinx. Okay, so now we're going to go to the root directory here. We're going to just do make dir Sphinx. And then we're going to put a couple directories in here. So I'm going to do this, make dir scripts, rst, html. Basically, I'm going to put my Python code in this scripts directory. This directory is the step before it generates the HTML. And I'll show you that all here. So now we have these three directories here. And now we're going to run the Sphinx quick start command. And this is going to ask you a series of questions and generate a conf.py file. So for the most part, these brackets means what the default value is. And I'm just going to press enter for the most of them. There are some I'm going to change here. So I just picked the default for that. It says separate source and build directories. I say no. Static dir is fine. Project name, I'm just going to name this YouTube since for this tutorial. The author's name, which is mine. I'm going to say this is version 1.0. English. RST is fine. Name of your master document without suffix. I just leave this as index. And here it says, do you want to do the EPUB builder? I don't need this because I'm going to actually serve it as HTML. So this one is where I change, actually. It says automatically insert doc strings from the modules. And that's basically what I was showing you in the beginning of this tutorial. So here I want to press yes. The rest of these I picked no. One that's really nice, though, is this last one here. Right here, it says include links to the source code of documented Python objects. If you click yes here, you'll actually get the documentation, plus you'll be able to click it and actually see the code that's written behind the scenes. Now, it depends on who you're giving this to. If you're giving this to your boss and he wants to see the code, you want to select yes here. If you're giving this to a client and you don't want them to see the code, you select no here. So your code will be included in the docs if you select yes here. So for this example, I'll select no here. It's going to make this make file. It says create Windows command file. The default is yes. I'm not on Windows, so I'm going to click no. Okay, so now we have this conf.py, this index.rst, and this make file. So there's some stuff in this conf file I actually have to change before we continue. So right after these imports, I have to tell it where my scripts are. And basically it's going to say sys path append, and I'm going to put my scripts in root Sphinx scripts. And the other thing that's optional to change is this theme setting. The default theme here is called Alabaster. I changed this. I don't like that theme to default. It's up to you if you want to change it. There's a bunch of them. It's up to you. So write that out and quit. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is do make HTML. And basically this is going to generate some of the static HTML. Now, this is where I've ran into problems before within the virtual machine. Sometimes the make HTML has failed on me because it needed elevated privileges. So instead I just do this in a virtualized container and just let it run. I'm running it under the root user, which isn't great, but as long as it's a self-contained container, I let it have these privileges. Okay, so let's copy down our source code. So I'm going to go in the scripts directory, and I'm going to get that pets.py file here. And if we look at this, this is exactly what I showed you at the start of the tutorial, and all this documentation here. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is generate this RST stuff, which is basically the stock settings. If you have ever worked with like YAML or XML or some type of markup language, this is basically what it's auto-generating for this. So the command to this is just Sphinx API-O, and we're going to point this at our RST folder and then the scripts folder. And you can see here it created two files, this pets.rst and this modules.rst. Now, the next thing we have to do is this RST folder has these two files in it. I recommend copying modules to index.rst. Now, I'll show you why that matters after I do this first demo, and and why it's nice to have that copied. The next thing here is you want to do make static here. You need the static directory. And then I also want to copy my conf.p file to this directory. So here's the output now. We have this conf, this index, this modules, this pets, and this static. And you can look at these files and look at the markup and see how. So it shows you what it's going to do here. Don't worry about what all this means, but this was all auto-generated by the Sphinx documentation. Okay, so the next step, go up one folder, is we're going to build the HTML. And it's just Sphinx build -b HTML, and the source directory of where our stuff is, so it's root Sphinx RST, and where we want to put it. So we're going to put it in root Sphinx HTML. You get this warning here. I've tried to figure out how to get rid of it. Some of the stuff is a little confusing. I don't know if it's python3 that's causing this error. If you know, put it in the documentation and I'll try to fix it. But as far as I can tell, this warning doesn't bother what I've auto-generated. So if we go to this root Sphinx HTML, you'll actually have all your documentation auto-generated here. And this is static. This is basically just static HTML. So let's make a directory for it on our web server. And let's copy. So this is what we're going to do. Copy all the files from this root Sphinx HTML to var www HTML Sphinx. And the last step is make sure you fix permissions, and it's just chown -www data. You want to make sure that the permissions on the file you copied are accessible to the web server. If you do that and you go var www Sphinx HTML Sphinx, and you can see here these are all www data now. Okay, so let's take a look at this documentation on what it generated. So I get the IP address of this machine, copy it to the clipboard. I bring back up my web browser and go to that IP address. And here's the default Apache 2 Ubuntu page. And now you can just do /Sphinx. And you can see here, this is what the output of the Sphinx documentation looks like. So it has the scripts here. This is the default theme here. I think it looks better than the other one that it actually defaults to, the Alabaster theme. But now you can click this pets module, and you can actually see all the information about the pets module without the code. You can see there's a method here called random pets, static method called getAverageAge, add pet, and it's actually really nice to see all this documentation. Now, you can also search for stuff over here too. So if I knew there was show pets, you can just type in show pets, and you can see here that it does pets, and it'll highlight it here. So this is actually really nice documentation of the pets module. Okay, so some caveats on how this works and how it was auto-generated. So let's go back to the Sphinx scripts directory here, and we're going to copy this pets to dogs.py, and we're going to edit this real quick to say dogs instead of pets. So we're going to do 2. And remember when I said that it always runs your code if it's not self-contained? We're actually going to show you that here when we auto-generate this code, or auto-generate the documentation here. Now you notice here, print hello world is fine. It's just going to spit that out to the screen. But if you had some code that it was going to do that, I don't know, deletes something or changes something, you certainly don't want to be auto-generating documentation that's going to change something on your system. So now we have 2 sets of classes here. And this also goes into example on how to regenerate the documentation after you have already done this once. So this RST folder is basically where the start of the auto-generated documentation happens. But you don't have to go through all those steps again. So actually I'm just going to remove everything in here. So be very careful running this command. Basically says remove everything in this directory. So now we have nothing. So we want to copy back our conf.py to this local. We want to make our static directory again. And these both will error out when you run one of the commands if you don't have these. And it's pretty self-explanatory if you missed something. It'll say conf.py not found or _static not found. Okay, so the rest of these are auto-generated with the Sphinx API doc command. So I'm going to run this one again. You can see here that it did the dogs and the pets. Okay, and we can go into RST. And you can see there's no index.rst. Now, when we go to generate the HTML again, it's actually going to complain about this index.rst not existing here. And it was very strange when I first saw that. So there's actually an index.rst in this main folder. I actually can copy this over if you don't want the modules to show up on the main page. Personally, I like to just copy over that modules.rst to index.rst. Maybe not everyone wants that, so here you can just copy the default one in this directory up here. And if you notice right here, what did this say right here? And as you can see, it just ran this code inside that Python class called dogs. And you got to be very, very careful that you don't have destructive code there. So you want to make sure it's always self-contained in a module, a method, a function, or a class. So make sure, see how it spit out hello world? So as soon as you generated the HTML, it actually ran that code. So be very, very careful with that. Okay, so we copied this. Let's actually fix our code here to get this print out. Let's get that out of there. Okay, so now we're going to generate the HTML again. This time we copied over this index.rst that it was complaining about right here. And this time the error will go away. And you can see here it didn't say hello world at all. So, you know, it actually does run that code, but as long as it's in one of those 3 things, a method, a class, or a function, it won't actually run. Okay, so next we'll copy over the HTML to our web server and fix the permissions one last time. And I'll show you what this looks like now without. So this is the default of what it looks like. And you can see here it doesn't actually have your pets or dogs here, but if you go to module index here, you'll see dogs and you'll see pets. And the search works over here too, so we can do show pets. And you can see that show pets is actually contained in both the dog class and the pets class. That's a pretty poor example just because I copied the class over. But you can see that it will search multiple methods all the way down, and it's actually really nice. And now you can actually secure this page, usually with username and password in Apache, and then you can give this out to clients or your boss or anyone else internally in the company that needs to know the documentation for your pets module. Hopefully this helps you auto document your Python code. If you have any questions, if you have any better ways to do this, put this in the notes below. It's been a little bit tricky switching to Python 3, but you can see here I've used all Python 3 pip and stuff. Some people still have problems with using Python 3 on Sphinx, but I think for the most part this has been working for me. If you know how to fix some of those warnings, let me know. Hopefully this tutorial helps you. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.